Education Zone, and my name is Anthony Nathaniel. And today we'll be talking about digitization of data. So digitization of data is a topic, very important topic in our data processing course for senior secondary school. And we'll be talking about basically what digitization of data is. So without wasting much time, let's delve into the real matter. So now digitization can be simply defined as the process whereby some data is also converted from analog signal into digital signal. So, and majorly in our jet age, a lot of our data is converted from analog to digital. So in so doing, many of the magnitudes and all the properties of analog are converted to digital. And just for those of you who don't fully understand what analog means, analog signals are basically like waves. So when you have analog data behave like waves. So an example of this is electromagnetic waves, which also form the radio waves that transfer signal from our radio stations into our devices. Now we also have digital data. Digital data can be in two forms, ones and zeros. So now basically digitization is the process of converting all these waves into ones and zeros. And in formal terms, you can also define digitization as a process whereby we are converting data into digital format. And it can also be seen as the incorporation of digital technology into our everyday life. Now this digital technology have different types. We have digital technology in our consumer goods, digital technology in our communication, digital technology in our medicine, digital technology in our transportation, and every other technological application in our everyday life. So when you talk about digital applications, they encompass every sector of our economy. So now digitalization has not been possible without the history of computers. So in this video we'll talk briefly about the classification of some type of computers, and these computers are computers that apply and make use of digital technology. Now the first we'll talk about is microcomputers. We'll talk about microcomputers. We'll talk about mainframe computers. We'll also talk about mini computers, and then we'll talk about supercomputers. These are supercomputers. So basically, microcomputers, they are the tiniest part of computers, and they work with what is called a microprocessor. And what's a microprocessor? A microprocessor is basically a flat semiconductor material in which there are layers of conducting materials or copper materials, and along those copper materials you have your devices such as your resistor, your diodes, your capacitors, your thermistors, and every other device that helps that circuit to work. And those microprocessors, those micro devices, they are also embedded in an integrated circuit, and that integrated circuit is also embedded into a microprocessor. Now every microprocessor is also known as a microchip, and those chips, they compass different and thousands of materials, different thousands of electrical devices which come together and function as electrical charges and electrical current to produce the powerful computers we use, such as this smartphone on which you are watching me today. I on the camera of the smartphone, and it is receiving the sound and the light rays for my video, and now it is converting that into a format which you can use, and that is done by the power of your integrated circuit, also known as when you combine integrated circuits together, you get what is called a microprocessor. Now that microprocessor is what forms the basis of your microcomputers. Now next we'll talk about mainframe computers. Now mainframe computers, they still exist today, but they were the earliest computers because they were formed in the decades, like 5 decades ago, and they were formed they were very large, they produced a lot of heat, and they were very large, and they were used for large corporations. Now there's what is called the speed of the computers. Now the speed of a mainframe computer is called MIPS, and that MIPS is a measure of the millions instructions per second. Now that speed of the microcomputers is basically the amount of instruction, how many millions of instructions can it receive per second. Now you probably heard of the fact that computers are extremely fast. So computers are not like the human brains that can only take a few instructions per second. Computers can take millions of instructions per second, and the amount of instructions per second of a mainframe computer is also known as the power of the computer. Next, we'll talk about the next part of computers. We'll talk about mini computers. Mini computers are computers that are not as small as microcomputers, but they are not as big as mainframe computers. So in short, you can define mini computers as computers that are classified in the mid-range of the computing spectrum between microcomputers and mainframe computers. Mini computers are just like computers like our consoles, our desktop computers, which are used in many cyber cafes and many internet facilities. So those computers, they are not as small as our microcomputers today, but they are not as large as our mainframe computers. So those mini computers, they are used to perform very high processes, and they are more powerful than our mainframe computers. They are used by small and medium businesses such as all these blue chip companies that produce our goods, and they are used in automation and every other computerized activities. Then lastly, we talk about the supercomputers. Now supercomputers are extremely fast. Now supercomputers, they are applied in when we are making use of extremely specialized devices such as wind tunnels and devices that are able to analyze and process inputs from dynamics, thermodynamics, and other scientific applications. Now those supercomputers, they are extremely fast, and their power is measured in flops, and that flop is called the floating point operation per second. So the speed of supercomputers is measured in flops, and flops is called floating point operation per second. Now that flops is a more specialized term used for the speed and power of supercomputers, and of all these four, supercomputers are the most powerful in that they have a high processing power. They are often very specialized, and they are used in scientific applications. So those are the type of computers, and those are computers that apply digitization. So now we'll talk later about the various components of computer. The first component we'll talk about is the data part. We have the data part, then we have the control part, then we have the memory part, we have the input part and the output part. The input and the output parts are they readily visible. The input part is the keyboard, right? The keyboard, your mouse, and your joystick, while your output parts are often like your speaker, your screen, your monitor, and your every other your plotter, projector. Those are output parts. Then data parts are embedded in your computer. They are like the firmware of the computer, the components of the computer that make the computer work and integrate with the output or the hardware. Then we have your memory. Your control unit is also embedded in your integrated circuits or the computer memory, and then your memory unit is kind of like a semiconductor material that can store the state of its, that can remember its state. So a memory card is basically a device that can remember its former state, and those are the basic parts of the computer, and those parts of the computer make and apply digital technology. Thank you for watching.